Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, a show by the people, for the people. Texans Today mailbag. All these questions were answered from our live show on September 3rd. Yes, a September 3rd live show. We're doing weekly live shows here on Texans Today. Every Wednesday at 3:30 Central Time, we're going live. All you got to do if you're watching this live, hashtag Texans or Super Chat to get on the program. And all the questions are from our loyal subscribers who tuned in to our Texans Today live show. And if you want to be a part of one of these, make sure you pull up on Wednesdays to be part of our Texans Today lives. And just a reminder, we will be going live Texans versus Rams Week 1 live watch party. We have live Wednesday shows, and then we do our live watch parties that get a little bit more crazy. So if you want to be part of all that action, make sure to pull up this Sunday as we go live for Texans up against the Rams. All right, let's go to the first one here from Sam Durant. Texans, we need our D-line to sack Stafford if we want to win. I agree. I made a video of our keys to victory. And actually, the very first key was get pressure on Matthew Stafford. We've talked about it maybe ad nauseum around Matthew Stafford's back injury. He should be good to go. Or the Rams have said he's good to go week 1. He will be playing. But that doesn't mean that back is still not, fully fixed. I think he's still playing injured. And I think the Texans can make him very uncomfortable if this D-line, most namely Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, are able to get pressure on the Rams quarterback. I think this could be a big day for this Texans defense. I agree with you, Sam Durant, and I think the Texans, for them to win, they need to get some pressure on Matthew Stafford. All right, let's look at this next one from Krautsky. Shout out all the way from Germany. How are we doing? Texans, hashtag Texans. What are your expectations for Pitre this season? His injury hurt the defense massively. And I agree with you 100% on this one, Krautsky. Pitre, he got injured midway through the season. And the difference between him being on the field and then him being off the field was very noticeable. He plays a very special position because the Texans, they switched to a 4-2-5. That means 4 D linemen, 2 linebackers, and then 5 guys in the secondary. And Pitre is kind of this special nickel star role player where he's a pseudo linebacker for this Texans team. Right? He's a big hitter. He can play in the nickel. He can guard tight ends, guard slots, and then he can also help you in run defense. He's a great run defender. And I think you see this in how much he impacts his Texans defense with the fact that they went ahead and extended him this offseason, even though he missed half the year due to injury. They still were like, hey, we've seen enough from you to know what you bring to the table, and if you're healthy, we want you to keep on bringing it for the Houston Texans. I expect Pitre to be a major part in this Texans defense and be a big part of this Texans run defense especially. He sets the tone. Him and Azeez Al-Shaair are 2 big hitters in the middle. Even though Pitre, smaller in stature, I believe he's only 5'10", he still brings the boom. And I expect him to do that during the 2025 season. Great question, Krautsky. We bring the boom. 1TZ Cosmo, hashtag Texans. No one is talking about the Texans defense in their predictions. Texans D will be our secret weapon since not a lot of people notice it yet on how good they are. H's up. And that's the thing. We talked about ESPN. They had a article with a lot of predictions, and their, calculator, however they kind of calculated it, said the Texans were 8.8 wins this year was their projection for the Texans. 8.8 wins. I don't see how you have that, and I think a lot of the onus goes on to the Texans offensive line and this Texans offense. But the Texans defense is returning most of their starters from last year. And yeah, they added CJ Gardner-Johnson on the back end. So they're only going to be better. They were one of the top teams in terms of takeaways last year, and they were one of the top teams in terms of getting after the quarterback. So I think this Texans defense is going to take another step up. You have a defensive-minded head coach in D'Amico Ryans who's ready to pump it up to the next level. We just talked about what Krautsky said. Pitre should be back this year, and I hope he's able to play all 17 games for this Texans defense. If that's the case, I agree 100%. Nobody is talking about this Texans defense, and nobody's talking about how much of an impact that's going to have week in and week out during this Texans schedule. Now, I want to hear from you. Which player needs to step up for the Texans to beat the Rams on Sunday? Is it Jalen Pitre? Is it somebody on this Texans D-line? Is it somebody else that we haven't even talked about? Let me know down in the comment section which player needs to step up for the Texans to beat the Rams this weekend. I'm going to go with Ariante Ursery, the rookie left tackle. It's a big stage. Week 1, you won the starting job, the second-round pick out of Minnesota. But what is your consolation prize? You go up against a really good Rams defense with a couple really good pass rushers. I mean, just looking at their starting unit, Braden Fisk, who was a rookie last year, really good. Oh, yeah, they have a guy named Jerrod, who's another ascending pass rusher. So it's not going to be an easy task whatsoever. I need the left tackle, the rookie Ariante Ursery, to prove once again to everybody around the NFL, to all of us Texans fans, that he was maybe the steal of the 2025 NFL draft. I think Ariante Ursery is somebody who definitely needs to step up this week for the Texans to win. And speaking of the Texans winning, you can win this week too with our friends over at Prize Picks. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Prize Picks, they put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And my lineup for this week, CJ Stroud, we saw it in the playoffs last year. Use his legs a lot more. I think he'll do that once again this season under new OC Nick Caley. Matthew Stafford dealing with that back issue, 0.5 interceptions. More on that. And then Nick Chubb, 43.5 rush yards. He is going to be the lead back for this Texans team. I think he better get more than 43.5 rush yards if this Texans offense wants to be balanced and move the ball well up against this Rams defense. You can use this, or hell, go ahead and make your own. Just do it with our friends over at Prize Picks. Look how happy Drewski is playing Prize Picks right there. You can be that happy too. All you got to do, download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, Delvin Johnson, hashtag Texans. Do you think Kamari Lassiter is going to come to play with a bigger chip on his shoulder since he was left off the NFL Top 100 list? Great question. I was talking about it earlier on our live show. I think the only reason he's not ranked ahead of guys like a Cooper DeJean, like a Quinyon Mitchell, both really good corners in their own aspect, I think it's because the Eagles won the Super Bowl and all the hype around that. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at the play, when you look at just the raw footage of Kamari Lassiter and those guys, I would argue he's better than Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. And I hope he's able to prove that this year, because you look at who's on the other side of Kamari Lassiter. In my opinion, the best corner in the entire league, Derek Stingley Jr. And what does that mean? That means opposing teams, opposing quarterbacks, they don't want to go against Derek Stingley. They don't want to test him. So they're going to look the other way. They're going to look at Kamari Lassiter. And when he was targeted last year, completion percentage under 50%. So he was tested a lot, and they still weren't completing balls on him. That just shows you how good Kamari Lassiter is and how good I think he can be this year for this Texans defense. EG Productions, do you think Nico Collins will have, more than 100 receptions this year? We'll go more or less. Shout out to our friends at Prize Picks. 100 receptions. That's going to be really dependent, in my opinion, on whether or not Nico Collins plays 17 games. He has yet to have over 100 receptions in a year. Last year, 68 receptions. The year before that, 80 receptions, 37 receptions, and then 33 receptions. But also, when you look at Nico Collins and you look at, how he's done, last year played in 14 games. The year before that, played in 10, played in 15, played in 12. Has yet to play a full NFL season. So, if you're looking at the Houston Texans and you're looking at Nico Collins, it's not about can he get 100 receptions. Of course he can. When he's healthy, Nico Collins is a top 5 wide receiver in this league. The only question is his health. Will that help him stay on the field and allow him to get 100 receptions? That's the key question, is how many games is Nico Collins going to play? If he plays 17, I have no doubt that he can get to 100 receptions in 2025. Noah Santana Suavemente. Hashtag Texans, best trade you would make right now. See, because this is a tough one, because I think the Texans roster right now is pretty damn good. I think they're pretty solid, in my opinion. And if I'm looking at a trade, if you're making a trade, you need something, right? You have a huge, point of emphasis. You have a big gap in your team, a big hole in your team that needs help, right? If I'm the Texans, I don't necessarily know where that gap is. I mean, running back maybe, but I think you're pretty solid with your depth there. I mean, maybe if Joe Mixon, I would say the one trade I'll say, Noah, is I actually talked about it in a show a couple days ago. The only trade I would consider or look at this point right now is if Joe Mixon's out for the year, if he comes after 4 games, if they say, you know what, we're shutting him down, I would look at a Breece Hall trade with the New York Jets. They don't want to re-sign him. He's a very talented back. And if things aren't working out with your running back room, Dameon Pierce, a couple other guys, and you want more talent back there, I would look at a Breece Hall. But in terms of, depth guys, I'm thinking of safety, cornerback, maybe for some depth. I don't know if you want to, necessarily give up draft assets to trade for depth. I'd rather you look out in free agency. There's still a lot of good safeties and corners left in free agency. Why give up draft capital to get, a safety, a cornerback that's not going to start for you? There's nobody out there that you could trade for right now, in my opinion, that would make you better in the secondary than your starters right now. You need depth, guys behind them. So that's why I would say the only trade that I would say makes sense for the Texans would be a Breece Hall trade if Joe Mixon's not able to come back. But still, I would lean towards no. I don't think the Texans need to make any trades as of right now. Good question, though, Noah. Brandon Michael, legitimate thoughts on Tank Dell return this season? Horrific injury, and it happened at a horrific time for Tank Dell. I mean, these injuries, there's never a good time to have an injury, of course, but it happened, week 16 last year? So it was at the end of the year, it was in December, and that means that's when his everything started for him. So everything around these injuries, and he had multiple injuries in his knee. It wasn't, just an ACL. It wasn't an MCL. He tore multiple different ligaments in that knee. Had to have multiple surgeries as well. I think the quickest he returns is a year. And if that's the mark, if it's a year, we're looking at December. So we're looking at kind of the same, week 15, week 16. Now, are the Texans going to be in a spot where they need Tank Dell? It's going to be a tough decision because you're already keeping 7 wide receivers on your roster. And then also you have to think about Tank Dell getting back into game shape, getting back to a point where he can be a plus on this team. I have no doubt that he's probably in the wide receiver meeting room around the, complex. He's talking to Nick Caley. He's around the team enough to where he should know the playbook, or at least, know it up here. But there's a difference between studying the playbook and then actually running it during practice and being there active, going through walkthroughs, this, that, and the other. I would lean towards no. I more than anybody, want to see Tank Dell return. Hell, the only H-Town alternate jersey that I own right now is number 3. It's Tank Dell. So, of course, I'd love to see him get back on the field. I'm just skeptical about it this year. I think the earliest we see him is into December, January. If it's anything earlier than that, I think it's a miracle, and I'm really hoping that that's the case for Tank Dell. But just from my opinion, from everything that I've heard and seen from him, that would be my safe option for Tank Dell, is to return in December. Good question, though, Brandon. Jay Stokes, do you think the Rams matchup is scary considering the unknown O-line situation versus one of the best D-lines in the league, especially at stunts? And that was a big concern. That is a major concern. Because we talked about Jerrod Verse, one of the best ascending edge rushers in the NFL, right there with Will Anderson Jr. Both those guys are kind of teetering on being one of the best pass rushers in the league. Both of them, really, really good. Braden Fisk as well for the Rams defensive line, and they like to run a lot of stunts. They like to run a lot of, misdirection on that D-line. And the Texans line was awful with that last year. Good news is, I think they're going to be better at that this year. They have an entirely new interior. They have Laken Tomlinson, Jake Andrews, Ed Ingram. Titus Howard, I think, is a better right tackle than he is a guard. So, yes, it's scary, but let's look at it this way. Instead of saying it's scary, let's say what an opportunity this Texans offensive line has. Everybody's doubting them. Everybody is already out in the count. I mean, ESPN is saying for the past 5 months that the Texans offensive line sucks, even though it's a completely different unit than it was last year. So what an opportunity you have. Week 1. Ariante Ursery, the rookie second-round pick out of Minnesota. What an opportunity you have, Laken Tomlinson, the old veteran that everybody said is washed up. What an opportunity you have, Jake Andrews, the center who was waived by the New England Patriots, brought in, and everybody said, who's this no-name Patriots castaway? What an opportunity you have, Ed Ingram, a former first-round pick out of LSU, a guard that everybody said was, not even worth the 6th-round pick that the Texans traded him for. And Titus Howard, what an opportunity you have here. A former first-round pick out of a small school, and a lot of people were very, very skeptical of the pick when the Texans made it. And even now, even though Titus Howard has had a pretty solid NFL career so far, he still has a ton of doubters that are looking at him to fail. So the entire Texans offensive line, what an opportunity to go up against the Rams week 1 and prove that you are not that bottom 10 offensive line, that you are not that awful reason that's holding the Texans back. What an opportunity you have. Let me know down in the comment section, what is your confidence level in this Texans offensive line? Scale it 1 to 10. 10, you think they're the best unit in the NFL. 1, you think they'll be the worst. I'm feeling halfway optimistic. I'm giving it a 7, and I think obviously there's going to be some bumps and bruises, but I'm expecting this offensive line unit to be much better than last year and prove the entire NFL wrong. All right, let's look at behind the veil. Do you think Dameon Pierce is a good backup to have in fantasy? I think in fantasy, no. If I was in fantasy, honestly, and if I'm looking at running backs, obviously Nick Chubb is going to be the lead back. But depending on what league you're in, if you're in a PPR, that means points per reception. Look at Woody Marks. He's going to be a 3rd down back. The reason why the Texans drafted Woody Marks, they actually traded up in round 4 for Woody Marks, is because of his pass catching ability. He's somebody that the Texans front office, that their coaching staff pinpointed and said, this guy, this is a missing piece that we need in our running back room that can really help. So if you're looking at a backup to be kind of a handicap for this Texans running back room, and I'm not saying go out and start Woody Marks week 1, but if you're looking for somebody to stash and say, hey, he might be a good fantasy performer that nobody sees coming, I think Woody Marks, in my opinion. And I'll give you some more free fantasy advice right now. Also look at Christian Kirk. 88% of leagues right now, undrafted. I'm just saying, take a flyer on Christian Kirk. Thank you for the question, though, behind the Boyd. Next up, Jack Tripper 3's company, #Texans. Since we kept more linebackers this year, will Pitre's field time be less? I will say, though, I think not because necessarily they kept more linebackers. I think it's because they kept less guys in the secondary. They only kept 4 corners on their 53-man roster. Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley, Jalen Smith, Tremont Smith. They have 4. Then they kept 4 guys in the safety room. Jalen Pitre, Kalen Bullock, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, M.J. Stewart. I think because of the numbers, just raw numbers right there, you have to think the Texans might, even though they're going to a 4-2-5, they might run more 4-3. They might throw in an extra linebacker here and there because they have 6 linebackers on their roster. Very good observation, Jack Tripper 3's company. And I agree with you. Because of the linebackers and the configuration that how they kept guys on the defensive side of the football, I think you could see more 4-3 this year. And D'Amico Ryans, he's playing mind games. He talked about, week 1, we've got to learn and adjust from what the Rams are running. And I think we've been seeing 4-2-5 all offseason. But maybe week 1, Texans come out there, they line up in a 4-3. They have 3 linebackers, and it's Azeez Al-Shire, Henry To'oTo'o, and then either insert Christian Harris, Jake Hansen, EJ Speed, or Jamal Hill. I think this is a great observation and an astute one for my guy, Jack Tripper Threes Company. All right, John Garcia, Mr. Buddha, do you think the Texans will go with a split load running back, or will Chubb take most of the load? Pause. Hashtag Texans Today by Chat Sports. Chubb taking a load. Wow. I do think it is going to be a not split carry, but I think it'll be a somewhat running back by committee. But I think you'll see Nick Chubb take the first and second down reps. And then you'll see a third down back kind of rotate in. They'll put in a Gumbawale. They'll put in Pierce. They'll put in Woody Marks, depending on the situation. But I think it'll be a Nick Chubb gets 60% of the carries, and the other 40%, I think, are divvied out between the other three guys. You might even see British Brooks in goal line packages. The bruising, running back, fullback, tight end, special teams ace. I think you'd see him in there too. But I would say Nick Chubb 60% of the carries, and then the other 40% you'll see doled out to Woody Marks, Agumbawale, Damian Pierce, maybe even a little bit of British Brooks. That's all I have for you on this Texans Today mailbag. Make sure you join us. Week 1 matchup, Texans, Rams. Hey, you don't want to miss it whatsoever. Make sure you're here, and make sure you're here early. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications because we will be live for week 1. Bunch of giveaways, a ton of fun. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join us all year long for all of our watch parties and our live Wednesday shows, just like this one that was filmed on Wednesday. We'll be live every Wednesday at 3:30 Central Time.